The United Nations Special Envoy briefed the United Nations Security Council on the latest development in Yemen. Amid his visit to Sana'a, he expressed his hope that there is a new path for peace in the country. This report has more.
UN Security Council held a meeting to discuss the situation in Yemen. Hans Grunberg talked about the discussions he had with regional countries and parties to the conflict to help end the war in Yemen. Despite the efforts made by the international community, there are still many obstacles that make it hard to reach a peace agreement in Yemen, including the Houthis' negative behavior to be included in any peace talks.
I call on the parties to respect international humanitarian law. Military activity combined with negative rhetoric and escalatory political and economic measures, create a situation where a simple miscalculation could reignite a cycle of violence that will be difficult to reverse. I therefore urge the parties to actively work to extend the longest period of relative quiet we have seen in the past 8 years, which offers a much-needed reprieve for the Yemeni population.
The Houthis took control of the capital Sana'a in Yemen back in 2014, resulting in the world's worst humanitarian catastrophe. A UN-backed truce which took effect in April 2022 and ended on October 2 raised hopes for a longer pause in fighting, but unfortunately it ended after 6 months of its start. Mr. Grunberg called on a long-term or a permanent solution for the conflict in Yemen, rather than focusing on temporary solutions that bring temporary relief.
We know from experience, however, that short-term measures and a piecemeal approach that focuses on individual issues can only provide temporary and partial relief. This is why I have also been engaging the parties on embedding these immediate-term measures in a more holistic vision and ensuring movement towards a more comprehensive settlement. This includes the resumption of a political process and a nationwide ceasefire. We are currently seeing an intensification of regional and international diplomatic activity to resolve the conflict in Yemen.
The meeting was also attended by UN humanitarian chief Martin Griffiths, who talked about how the situation in 2023 could continue to be extremely difficult for Yemenis due to many factors, including the country's economy.
I, of course, also fear that 2023 will be another extremely difficult year for the people of Yemen. Humanitarian needs remain alarmingly high as the country's economy continues to weaken and basic services hang by a thread. Meanwhile, people's access to humanitarian assistance is being impeded as aid agencies are forced to contend with an increasingly challenging operating environment, as well as a funding landscape which does not encourage. Mr. President, in 2023, this year, an estimated 21.6 million people across Yemen will need humanitarian assistance and protection services, and it is precisely because this is such a high percentage of the total population of Yemen that the United Nations has for so long talked about the humanitarian crisis in Yemen as being the worst that we see globally.
Finally, the UN envoy Hans Grunberg concluded the UN Security Council meeting by urging the parties to move quickly towards a shared vision with concrete, actionable steps.
Yemen needs an agreement that includes a shared vision for the way forward in order to avoid a return to full-blown conflict. I therefore urge the parties to make the most of the space for dialogue provided by the absence of large-scale fighting. I would also like to reiterate my sincere appreciation for the steadfast support of this Council.
The world community, and more importantly, the conflicting parties, must not allow this opportunity to pass them by. In addition, they must back the UN's call for humanitarian aid and step up their efforts to strengthen Yemen's economy and help end the conflict in Yemen.